Hello and welcome to today's lesson for Introduction to Engineering Design. My name is Mr. Stevens and today is 8:31. Today's lecture will be for 8:31 and for 9:1. The topic of today is IED Lesson Plan 1.1.2, Iterate and Redesign. Welcome back from the weekend. Hopefully it was a good one for you. I took my boys hiking on the Indian Trail up here in Ogden, had a great time. I got a few blisters, so I'm wearing flip-flops today. We have one announcement here. If you have not yet received your PLTW login credentials, your username and your password, please email me at rostevens@dsdmail.net and include your full name in the email so I can verify your username, respond to the email, and give you your username and your login password. Instructions for logging in were posted on the DSD canvas as an announcement. So if you did not receive that announcement, then you might need to check your notifications and make sure that they're set up so that when I create an announcement, you get an email so that you know that, hey, there's an announcement, go check it. So go ahead and check that announcement. It tells you how to log on with your credentials, where to go. All the troubleshooting stuff should be right there for you. All right, if you are a B-Day student, you should have received an announcement on Canvas stating that our first C-Day, which was this past Friday, and the date on that was, let's see, 8/28. We had our first C-Day and it had a B-Day emphasis. So you should have received a notification that there was a small quiz, and the quiz was available from Friday morning through Sunday night at midnight. It was a quick 4 easy questions, 4 points. And so you can see it is important to make sure that you do check your email regularly every day in this class, like we talked about in the disclosure, and that you get a notification every time I put out an announcement. So we will be doing those quizzes every Friday. And so this coming Friday, we'll have an A-Day emphasis. So A-Day students will take that same quiz that B-Day students took last week. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. All right, let's launch into today's lesson content. I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen and make sure we share the correct one today. So here is the screen. All right, so today in class, we're going to be talking about iterate and redesign. Before we get started, as always, we do the Big Fat ACT prep book here. Today will be on page 217 at the top half of the page. And by the way, you can follow along on my screen here, or you can pull up this lesson plan on your own. The way to get to it is to go to DSD Canvas here. Once you log in, your screen should look like this. On the main page or the module page, scroll down until you see lesson plans right here. Today we are doing 1.1.2, iterate and redesign. So that's the one we're working on today. You should only be able to see the ones that have green check marks that have been published. These are ones I've created that we haven't quite gotten to yet. But today we're at 1.1.2, iterate and redesign. Once you click here, you will see the lesson plan that we're following right here. So let's start with our ACT prep. Here's our big book. And we'll stop sharing screen. So today if you remember, we're talking about time management strategies on the ACT test. And you have two primary options for this. And which one you choose really depends on how many questions you need to get right on the ACT. So think back to last time we met here online, and I showed you this book up here at the screen, and you saw this table, and the table told you how many ACT math questions you need to get correct for where you specifically want to go to school. We gave you time to Google what ACT score you needed. So if you need, let's see, if your goal is to complete every question, spend 25 minutes on the first 30 questions and 30 minutes on the last 30 questions. That's option one, and we'll talk about that here for a second. Option two is for students who are not going to do every question, and we'll get to that in a minute. So back to option one. If your goal is to complete every question, spend 25 minutes on the first 30 questions and 35 minutes on the last 30 questions. Remember, they're a little more difficult. This makes sense if you're trying to score in the 30s, since you will need to attempt most every question. If you can allot your time in this way, you will not dwell on easier questions at the beginning, and you will likely have sufficient time to solve the more challenging questions toward the end. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, and option two. If you're not going to do every question and you tend to rush by guessing on some of the last questions, all right? Since every question is worth the same amount, it makes sense to pick your battles wisely. Why waste time on tougher questions when just a bit more time on easier questions will allow you to fully understand them and avoid careless errors? If this approach makes sense to you, think of the number of questions you want to guess on and start the math test by bubbling in the same letter for every single one of those ending questions. Many students find that guessing on the last column on the answer sheet, questions 51 through 60, is a great approach. You will find that taking these tough questions off of the table will help you to relax and focus on the questions you are choosing to do. All right, so that's our strategic tip today for helping you do well in terms of time management on the ACT math section. So let's go back to our lesson plan here. We've done our ACT prep for the day. Let's talk about what we will be learning and doing today. So first, today, we're going to be talking about brainstorming. Now, I know that you understand conceptually what brainstorming is, but we're going to talk about specific strategies on how to brainstorm more effectively and how to move past brainstorming and continue the process when we get stuck in the process. We're also going to talk about the design process. Today we'll complete activity 1.1.2, it's instant challenge, and it's going to help us iterate on the steps of the design process to improve a solution. It's going to help us use statistics to compare center and spread of 2 or more data sets. And lastly, you will draw conclusions related to a prediction and support conclusions using experimental data. But why should we care about any of this? How does it help us achieve our class goals? And why else should we care? Well, let's look at what our class goals are real quick. I'm going to pause this until I get it back up. Let's see. All right, I'm going to show you how to find the course goals so you can follow along with me here. All right, you should be looking at our online Canvas course. If you log in to DSD Canvas, your course should look like this. Under Administrative Documents, you can go down here to Course Goals, Models, Rules, and Roles. Once you open it, it'll open this screen for you. The goal first today is safety first, always and forever. Take a minute and think about how we can be safe today. We're going to be using scissors, and we're going to be modifying our beanbag launchers. So we'll definitely need eye protection again. If there's any other safety constraints you can think of for yourself at home, please follow them and use good judgment and be safe. Course goal number 2, get exposure to how engineering principles are applied in industry. Use this experience to address whether a career in engineering may be a good fit for you. So take a minute and think about how what we're doing today on the lesson plan, right here, helps us determine whether or not engineering might be a good fit for you. Go ahead and pause the video and think through how that could work out for you. All right, now that we're back and you've had a chance to think about that, in terms of brainstorming and using the design process, those are things that engineers do quite a bit. And so as you practice doing things that engineers do, it'll give you an idea as to whether or not engineering might be a good fit for you. You might love this. It might be a natural extension of your natural abilities. It might be like pulling teeth. But the important thing is that you'll know. And you'll know if this element of engineering could work for you. All right, let's go back to our last course goal. It says, learn the course material and Fusion and 360/Excel skills well enough to earn the university credit and USB certificate, earn the grade you want in this course, and prevent school from getting in the way of your education. So how in the world could learning about these elements help you get a good grade in this course? Well, if you said that this stuff will likely be on the assignment and the test, you're right. If you learn these concepts well, you'll be able to do well on today's exam, or on today's assignment, and the exam at the end of this unit. And it'll help you get a good grade in this course, and it'll improve your grade that goes on your university transcript if you signed up for CE credit for this course. All right, other reasons why we should care? If you can think of one, feel free to share it with me. You can reach me on email. How will you know if you've done your feedback? Let's see, if you've done your activity and your work well and genuinely learned today? Well, in class, let's see, you'll be able to submit your assignment to me on DSD Canvas, and I'll be able to give you good feedback on that. If you're working with a partner online, you can conduct partner checks. Also, if you can answer the 1.1.2 conclusion questions on PLTW individually, and you feel like you have a pretty good grasp of those, then you've mastered the content for today's class. So let's get to work. We're going to start here and look at the brainstorming element of today's assignment and of today's lecture. So you can click on here to follow along, or you can log into your my PLTW and follow along there. I'm going to open up the brainstorming session here. So there's basic brainstorming rules. In brainstorming, we're trying to generate all kinds of different ideas to solve a problem. We want to come up with ideas. We want to stimulate creative thinking. This can be done individually or in groups. It can be structured. It can be timed, untimed. But most importantly, it involves collecting ideas without regard to whether or not they work or to whether or not they are being criticized by other people. Because a lot of times if someone gets criticized for an idea, they stop sharing ideas. And we don't want that to happen in the brainstorming process. So here's the basic rules for brainstorming. Number one, capture all ideas. Every idea is important. Number two is allow all members to contribute. In class, we break students into groups of almost always no bigger than 2 students, so that there's never a third wheel and the groups don't get too big so that one person is kind of skating on the efforts of someone else. We want everyone to be able to contribute fully. There's no criticism allowed for ideas. Like we talked about, if someone's idea gets criticized, they're less likely to contribute more ideas, which could really be damaging to the brainstorming process. Maybe that person had the idea that was going to solve the project. Work for quantity to allow quality ideas to surface. Now, a lot of times people think that quality and quantity is a binary or mutually exclusive choice, and it's not. We can come up with a lot of ideas and then sift through them and take the absolute best ones. Rule number 5, welcome piling on. Use other ideas to launch new ideas. Lastly, allow a free-for-all. There are really no rules here. You can put in any idea you want to. As long as it is related to the project, you're in good shape. And encourage big thinking. This is where paradigm shifts can occur. So make sure you have a basic understanding of what brainstorming is for the exam. There's a lot of different ways to record ideas, and it's important to record them. A lot of times in the design process, you'll go through and take an idea and you'll work it out, create a model, and it won't work. And so you'll have to scrap that prototype and go back and start over. And so at that point, you look in your engineering notebook and find your brainstorming ideas that you had a while ago and read through and say, oh, this one didn't work, let's go with that one instead. So unless you record the ideas, you won't have them for when we go through that iterative process. A lot of people will record ideas with sticky notes. Some people record ideas on a legal pad. This is my favorite way. And some people will even record them audially or visually. There's a lot of different techniques for brainstorming, and you'll want to know these for the test. So these are powerful ideas that you can use when you sit down to brainstorm and the ideas just aren't flowing, or if people aren't contributing. This is a way to help make sure you get the ideas that you need. Have you ever sat down at a computer to write a paper for English or history and the ideas just don't come? This can also be used to overcome writer's block and engineering and get engineering ideas flowing. So it's kind of a multi-use strategy here. It translates to a lot of different fields. The first one is forced association. You'll want to have the definition of this one in your notes. Basically, it's where ideas are created by mentally forcing the association of 2 seemingly unrelated items. I don't know if some of you remember the candy that came out that was called combos. And the company would take flavors that traditionally wouldn't go together and made a candy out of them, and some of them were okay. So I remember one was pretzel and peanut butter, and they had a little cylinder that had a pretzel exterior, and they pushed peanut butter inside, and it wasn't terrible. They're out of business now, so at least as far as I'm aware. Another idea is Johann Gutenberg's idea for the printing press. He combined the idea of a wine press and a coin stamp to think of movable type press. So forced association. Make sure you have the definition of that in your notes for the test. The next idea is what's called Scamper. It's an acronym. And to use this, you have to already have a solution. You have to have at least one of them and one solution. And with this one solution, you can use all of these different ideas. And for the test, you'll need to know what each letter stands for. You won't need the specific definition right here, but you will need to know that S stands for substitute, C stands for combine, but you won't need to know what combine means down here. So just make sure that portion of this lecture gets into your notes for the test. So the substitute here is where you think about replacing part of the product or process with something else. Components, material, places, procedures, people, ideas, and even emotions can be changed or substituted. The C by the way, this Scamper is one of my favorite tools for getting ideas flowing. When I think about each one of these individually, I can come up with dozens of different ideas in a brainstorming session. So it's a quite powerful tool. Combine. Think about combining, mixing, or integrating different parts of the product to enhance synergy. Creative thinking involves combining ideas, goods, or services to create something new. The A stands for adapt. Think about adapting an existing idea. A solution probably already exists, but keep in mind that all new ideas or inventions are borrowed to some degree. On this one, just be careful if you're writing an English paper or a history paper that you cite anything that you're copying from someone else. In the engineering world, just make sure that if you're borrowing someone's idea, you give them credit. Magnify. Think about ways to overstate or exaggerate your idea. Magnifying may increase perceived value or provide new insights about what features are most important. The second M in Scamper stands for modify. Think about adjustments to the product that can improve appeal or function. Changing the existing shape or scale or adding features can improve performance and lead to new ideas. The P stands for put it to another use. Think of how an idea can be put to other uses, or what could be reused or recycled from somewhere else in order to enhance a product or solve a problem. E stands for eliminate. This is one of my favorites. Think of what might happen if parts were eliminated or minimized. Through trimming of ideas, objects, and processes, a challenge can be narrowed down to the area that is most important. You've probably heard Occam's razor, which says that of all the ideas out there to solve a problem, the simplest solution typically tends to be the most correct. Let's see, but not always. Then R stands for rearrange. Think of what would happen if a product or components changed order or moved. This is especially helpful in manufacturing engineering. I remember at Nutraceutical, we were having an issue with bow tie printing. Let me show you an example here. So here I've got just a little bottle, and we made a lot of bottles of these at our 203 facility, and you can see there's a label on the bottle. And you can see there's a little cut side on the label right there. Well, we were printing the lock code on this label right here. And so if my finger was the printer and the label and the bottle went by the print head and got printed on, there's a little sensor that told the label when to shoot. And the label would get printed on as it went by, but the part of the bottle right here would get printed on first, and then the middle part of the bottle would get closer to the print head because it's a circular bottle. You can kind of see it's in the shape of a circle. And then this part of the bottle on the back side would get printed on. And since on this cylinder, the print substrate or the label was different distances from the print head, we'd get what's called the bow tie effect. So the area right here on the label would be tall, and then the printing would get small as the bottle got closer to the print head. As the bottle got further away, the printing would get taller again. And so to get rid of this, we changed the ordering of operations. We rearranged it, and we printed on the substrate or the label while it was being fed through spools before it was applied to the bottle. So that's a good way to help solve that one. The last R in Scamper is reverse. Think of what would happen if parts of the product or process worked in reverse. Again, a very powerful tool. Scamper, you'll definitely want to know what all the acronyms stand for the test. Another way or a tool or strategy for brainstorming is mind mapping. It's a graphical representation that can be used to generate, visualize, and organize ideas to solve a problem. You'll want the definition of that one in your notes for sure for the test. Now, this is really a great way for those of us who learn visually. We can map our ideas and track them. You can see here in the example that to solve global warming, someone has had several ideas. They thought, well, we could have less waste. We could do something with our food. We could travel differently. We might modify our energy consumption or production. There's other changes we can make, or we could create things. And you can see here that the only idea that came from the concept of creating was to plant trees. But you can see over here, look at how many ideas come from less waste, from reducing, reusing, and recycling. This is a way to organize and track all of our brainstorming ideas. And this is especially important when you do value mapping or value streaming. We'll talk about that later in class. All right, so it's gotten tricky on me. We'll X out of that, and we should be back to the PLTW notebook here. Okay, so there are some brainstorming exercises and sample problems that you'll see throughout PLTW. And these are just more brainstorming exercises you can use. You don't need to know these ones for the test. This is nice to know content, not need to know. A lot of times you can use the bad ideas first concept, and that's where the best brainstorming occurs when everyone feels comfortable throwing out all ideas, regardless of how feasible they are or not. It also boosts confidence of members who might have been a little reluctant to share an idea. Once they see that there's no criticism going on, then the ideas start flowing a little more freely. It's kind of like a warm-up. Another way to help start brainstorming and to generate concepts is with word games. You can help stir up some creative thinking if you write one word down that's related to the project, and then have other people in the group brainstorm any other words that come to mind. This is especially helpful in marketing. I don't know if you've taken a marketing class recently or learned about the 3 Ps of marketing, but this is oftentimes done to generate slogans or catchy jingles or ways to advertise a product. In terms of drawing ideas, a lot of people work more creatively when the ideas they have in their head flow out through their hands. There's some sort of connection there. Psychologically, I'm not sure how all that works, but drawing can also be a powerful tool for brainstorming. So it can trigger different types of ideas by requiring students to doodle, sketch, or draw your ideas. All right, so we've talked about ways that brainstorming works well and ways to enhance brainstorming. There's some things you can do to inhibit brainstorming as well. And so you'll want to be sure to avoid these. These are what are called concept generation dysfunctions. And there will be some of these on the test. So make sure you have some of them in your design notebook if you'd like to do well on the test. So if you use a poor design brief, that can really hurt your brainstorming. And that's where you don't clearly define the problem well. Another pitfall here is assuming there's only one right answer. And we know that is not the case. There are lots of right answers. Have you ever heard the expression, there's more than one way to skin a cat? It's true. There's a lot of, it's a gross expression, but there's a lot of ways to get one job done. Another one is to get hooked on the first solution. And I'm guilty of that one. I come up with an idea, I'm like, oh, that's gonna work. And I keep working at it until I have to prove to myself that it doesn't work, and that can take a long time. Considering the ideas from only one or two team members. That happens quite a bit. Socially, if you're in a group where one or two people are a little more dominant, then that can really curtail or stop the flow of ideas from other members. One thing to be really careful about when you're working in a professional environment is to make sure that if you're brainstorming in a group that involves people who are higher on the organizational chart than others, that bosses or members of the executive team don't give out too frequent ideas or too many ideas, because, I mean, what do we all think when the boss gives an idea? Oh, okay, let's run with that. Let's try that one. So make sure that if you're like an engineering manager and you're brainstorming with your engineers, that you kind of hold back and let them do a lot of the brainstorming. If you have a solution that you want them to follow, just be direct and say, hey, I want to give this a try and see how it goes. Let's see, feeling too anxious to finish a project. I've been there, I know how that feels. Keep in mind in this class, you have at least a week to do every assignment that you get, unless you're on an IEP or a 504 plan, and then you have 2 weeks. Becoming frustrated by the lack of success. That's one that's very common to engineers. I gotta share a story with you about this one. So when I was working at a company, I came up with 5 or 6 solutions to a specific problem that would save the company a lot of money. And I presented each solution to our executive team. I emailed it in, I did in-person presentations, we talked on the phone, and every time it was met with indifference. And I thought, we stopped caring about money? What's going on here? This is a good project, it should go forward. And a month or two later, our company made an announcement saying we have acquired another organization. And at the time when I was presenting all of these ideas, that information had to be kept under wraps according to SEC, or the Securities and Exchange Commission guidelines. Well, requirements really. And so I was not allowed, since I was not at the time an officer of the company, I was not allowed to have that information. And had I known, I would have just held off on my project. But as soon as that information was made public, I got a call from our executive team saying, hey, remember that project you were working on? We bought this company that has all these assets that are really gonna help you with this project. So now that you have all these other tools, go back and figure out a solution that involves all the assets we got from this company. So that's one way, that's one example of this one. But one of the strategies that I used was to never become frustrated. And what helped me sleep at night and not really let it bug me too much was I just thought, hey, whether or not the executive team likes my ideas or uses them, it doesn't matter, because it all pays the same. It doesn't affect my paycheck one way or another. So whatever mechanism you use to help you hold on and be tough, use it. And then lastly, getting hooked on a solution that almost works. I can't tell you how many times I've been out fishing and I think, oh, I used a hackleberry fly in this lake right here, and it worked last time so well, I'm gonna use it again. And I get a few nibbles, but never a fish, and I'll just keep using that same fly all the time. But mixing it up and working on and using a different solution is more effective. All right, and lastly, if you ever get stuck, here are some excellent ideas. Combine promising partial solutions. Try a different brainstorming technique. Try both individual and group brainstorming. And then lastly, do some research. And this is actually where I like to start. If I'm working on a project, I want to talk to other engineers who have worked on it and ask them, hey, what did you find on this? I want to get caught up to speed so I don't repeat the work they've done. If it's a project that Google could help with, then I Google it. Hey, what's been done in the past on this? What ideas can I springboard off of to get to new and fresh ideas? So hopefully this gives you some ideas about how to brainstorm. And it gets you a little deeper involved in the brainstorming process than you may have hitherto been. Let's go back to our lesson plan and see how we're doing. So we covered brainstorming. Now let's talk about activity. We're gonna move on to this set of questions. And as a class, so if you're with other people, you can discuss it with them. But if you're on your own, you can think about these questions on your own. We're discuss them in reference to the beanbag launcher you built in our last class session, activity 1.1.1. So think about your design. Which designs did you see were successful? Now, you may have only seen your own design, and hopefully it was successful and it was able to move the beanbag. What made your device successful? Think about that for a second. So in class, a lot of answers were, well, it threw the beanbag, or it didn't break. And they're right. It depends on how we define success. If you remember from the assignment last time, the PLTW instructions were to construct a device that would launch a beanbag as far as possible. And so a lot of students said, hey, if it went really far, it was successful. And in every class, one device would go further than others. And so those people felt like they were the most successful. And then we'd ask the question in class, is there only one successful device? And they'd think about that. And the answer we came to as a class was, well, it depends on how we define success. If success is defined by getting full points on the assignment, everybody's device was successful, because everyone can get full points on the assignment without having the device that launched it the furthest. As long as you've completed all elements of the assignment and submitted everything required in the submittals and did a good job, you got full points. But if success is defined by you as throwing the beanbag furthest, then there was only one successful device. So it just depends on how you define success. The next question here is the device with the single furthest launch the best? Well, again, it comes down to how we define success. And then lastly, is the device with the most consistent distances the best? Well, again, it comes down to how we define success. And lastly, is describing desired outcome as a maximum distance a good way to define success? What do you think? Is that what the device should do? Something good to think about. All right, so let's go ahead and read the paragraph from PLTW with definitions of criteria and measurable, so you have them in your notes for the test. Again, if you don't have your PLTW credentials to follow along, you can email me and I'll give them to you. So here, once we get to PLTW, we're going to be on activity 1.1.1, and I've scrolled down about this far. And the paragraph here is, most engineering challenges are defined by specific measurable criteria so that you know whether the design is successful. The definition of criteria is something you'll want in your notes. It is a means of judging, a standard, rule, or test by which something can be judged. Pretty straightforward. Without criteria, it's hard to know if you're successful, right? Measurable, you'll want this definition up here, the short one, not the long one, in your notes. Measurable criteria are specific, concise design requirements that describe what the design solution must do to meet stakeholders' needs and be successful. Now in class, we usually pause and ask, who here has had a job? And we call on a few students and we ask them what their job was and if they felt like they were successful at that job and why they felt like they were successful. And students will say, yeah, I worked at this place and I felt like I was successful because my managers told me so. Or I had this internship and I felt like I was successful because I got out of it the things I wanted to learn. And so we learned that from this class discussion that our criteria and how we measure that can be both intrinsic and extrinsic. That means we can come up with our own criteria for whether or not we feel the job is going successfully. Or sometimes our bosses can give us that criteria and tell us if we're doing a good job or not. Now, the highest rates of job satisfaction come from situations where those intrinsic and extrinsic constraints tend to be aligned. So number one, you feel like you're doing a good job and you're able to measure your job performance. And two, your boss feels like you're doing a good job and is able to measure your job performance. All right. Let's go back to our lesson plan and see what we need to hit next. Okay, we've hit these ones. All right, now it's time to start on your assignment. You will be completing PLTW. Oh, by the way, your assignment can be found here in the lesson plan. It can also be found on assignments. So let's go ahead and make sure you know how to find that. If you go to your Intro to Engineering Design course in DSD Canvas, and then you click here on assignments, this one should pop up. It is 1.1.2, Iterate and Redesign. If you click on it, it pops up. This is the portal through which you'll submit your work. Let's look at our assignment today. I'm going to pull it up in the lesson plan, but it's just a copy and paste, so it's the same regardless of where you look at it. So today you'll be completing PLTW number 4. It's the instant challenge below, right here. You'll design a device that will consistently travel 3 feet. So the idea here is that you modify your beanbag launcher that you kept from your last activity now to launch a beanbag 3 feet. Not more than 3 feet, not less than 3 feet, but as close to 3 feet consistently as possible. That's the idea. So we've changed one of the measurable goals here of your project, right? Please document your work in your PLTW engineering notebook. Take notes, draw, sketch, describe your ideas, list questions you might have. Now here is what PLTW is asking you to do. Your goal is using only the materials provided. Again, you'll have to improvise with materials at home, or some students who are in the online section who have been coming into class and getting some of the materials, and that is totally fine. You're welcome to do that. So using only the materials provided, design and build a device to launch a small beanbag that will consistently travel a predetermined distance. That's going to be 3 feet. Team members, or if you're doing this individually, you may introduce the object into the device, but you may not provide any further momentum. So if you've got a spoon, you can't launch it like that. You need to follow these parameters. So go ahead and take the next 15 minutes, find your device, get it back out, and take 15 minutes to brainstorm and redesign your device to meet the new success criteria. What enhancements will help you meet this criteria? Feel free to use all the Scamper or mind force thought techniques that we talked about earlier in today's lecture. Feel free to rewind the videos and look at those again. After you've spent 15 minutes redesigning, please spend 5 minutes testing your device with as many launches as possible. Make sure to record the distance traveled by the beanbag to the nearest inch for each launch in your engineering notebook. All right, go ahead and do this now. You can pause the video. Okay, now that you have completed that portion of the assignment, you're ready to do the rest of the assignment. So in your engineering notebook, read and complete these bullet points. These again are here on the lesson plan, and they're also on the assignment on DSD Canvas. I want to make a special note to point out what your submittals are. It says to upload to DSD Canvas pictures of 1, your re-engineered launcher, and 2, your work from the bullet points. That's poor grammar here. Your work from the bullet points above from your engineering notebook. Most assignments that I have to return for students to resubmit for full credit just haven't read this submittals portion right here, and they haven't submitted everything they need to for the assignment. So that's what you're working on today. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, but I think things are pretty well explained in here. And then, as always, here as we have our class discussion questions. How did iteration improve your launcher design? I would ask you to answer that yourself. Also, maybe ask how brainstorming techniques might have helped your brainstorming session now as opposed to last time when you were just coming up with ideas without having these brainstorming tools. All right, if you're done, congratulations, pat yourself on the back, and you may be dismissed after you've sanitized your computer. Those of you at home. Hey, thanks for being in class, and we'll see you next time.